articles and thoughts on Vedanta by Sri Sachidanandendra Saraswati Swamiji, HoLenaraseepur. In this, we have already seen 22 chapters. Today's is the 23rd. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. The nature of consciousness according to Vedanta. Brahman is often described to be of the nature of consciousness, jnana, or special consciousness, vijnana, in the Upanishads, and the signification of these words in common parlance has misled many a beginner in Vedanta to suppose that this consciousness is the act of being conscious or aware of an object. This surmise is further supported by the widespread teaching that consciousness is a property of the brain or nerves. The ancient school of Sankhya, founded by Kapila, had a theory that Prakriti or primordial matter evolves itself into Mahat, universal consciousness, which later in its turn transforms itself into Ahankara and thence into the gross material world. Theologians of the various religions have all assumed that God is omniscient and as such possesses eternal consciousness inherent in his nature, by dint of which he is the overlord of all. The question naturally arises, what is meant by consciousness exactly when the Upanishads characterize Brahman as jnana or consciousness? Here is Shankara's answer. Satyananta shabdabhyam saha visheshanattvena jnana shabdasya prayogat satyam jnanamanantam brahma iti भावसाधनो ज्ञानशब्दः ज्ञानं ब्रह्मेति कर्तृत्वादि कारकनिवृत्त्यर्थं मृदादिवत् अचिद्रूपता निवृत्त्यर्थं च प्रयुज्यते ज्ञानं ब्रह्म इति वचनात् प्राप्तम् अन्तवत्त्वं लौकिकस्य ज्ञानस्य अन्तवत्वदर्शनात् अतः तन्निवृत्त्यर्थमाह अनन्तम् इति तैत्तिरीय भाष्य 2.1. As the word jnana is used as an epithet of Brahman along with the words satya, real, and ananta, infinite, the word jnana must be taken to have been used in the sense of an abstract noun, consciousness. Brahman is called consciousness in order to preclude agency and other case meanings of this word and to exclude the meaning of something inert like clay, etc., which, though real in the empirical sense, are not conscious. The expression Brahman is consciousness may imply fitness, that is, finiteness, inasmuch as empirical consciousness is seen to be finite, and so to preclude that the Shruti say that Brahman is infinite. From the above cited excerpt, you have to conclude that jnanam, consciousness, used in collocation with the words satyam, real, and anantam, infinite, can only mean consciousness in its essence and indicates the intrinsic infinite nature of Brahman and can never be understood to mean either the property of knowing or the function of knowing. And what do the Vedantas mean by the epithet Sarvajna, omniscient, as applied to Brahman? The followers of the Sankhya school hold that what the Vedantin calls the consciousness is really a property of Sattvam, one of the three constituents of Pradhana, the primordial matter. For the Gita says that jnana is a product of sattva, and on account of possessing a great measure of that property, yogins, each of whom owns a body and senses, are known to be omniscient. So, according to them, it is inconceivable that Brahman without a body or senses can ever be omniscient. Obviously, Brahman, which is said to possess eternal consciousness, cannot be said to exercise the function of knowing with any propriety, since it cannot be a knower in the strict sense. We have given above the substance of the Sankhya view of the matter. Without entering into a detailed consideration of the correctness or incorrectness of this view, we may now turn to what Shankara has to say in defense of the omniscience of Brahman. Idam tavat bhavan prashtavyaha katham nityajnanakriyatve sarvajnatva haniriti यस्य हि सर्वविषयावभासन क्षमं ज्ञानं नित्यमस्ति सो असर्वज्ञ इति विप्रतिषिद्धम् अनित्यत्वे हि ज्ञानस्य कदाचिज्जानाति कदाचिन्न जानाति इत्यसर्वज्ञत्वमपि स्यात् नासौ ज्ञाननित्यत्वे दोषोऽस्ति. सूत्रभाष्य 115. In the first place, we have to be asked, how is omniscience impaired if consciousness be eternal? To say that he who has eternal consciousness which can throw light upon all objects is not omniscient is manifestly a contradiction in terms. In the case of one whose consciousness is impermanent, it is of course possible that he is not omniscient, since he sometimes knows and sometimes does not know things. But this defect can never be imputed to one whose consciousness is eternal. And in his Taittiriya Bhashya, Shankara explains how Brahman is indisputably omniscient. Yattu Brahmano Vijnanam tat Savitra Prakashavat Agnyushnattvavaccha Brahmaswarupabhyatiriktam Swarupameva tat na tat कारणान्तरसव्यपेक्षं नित्यस्वरूपत्वात् सर्वभावानां च तेनाविभक्तदेशकालत्वात् कालाकाशादिकारणत्वाच्च निरतिशयसूक्ष्मत्वाच्च न तस्यान्यदविज्ञेयं सूक्ष्मं व्यवहितं विप्रकृष्टं भूतं भवद्भविष्यद्वा अस्ति. तस्मात् सर्वज्ञं तद्ब्रह्म. तैत्तिरीय भाष्य 2:1. As for the vijnana, consciousness of Brahman, it is like unto the light of the sun or the heat of the fire, the very essence of Brahman and not anything other than that, and so being eternal does not depend upon phenomena or in time and space which can never be distinct from it, and because it is the cause of even time and ether, etc. Moreover, as it is the most subtle entity, there is nothing unknowable, subtle, intercepted, distinct, past, present or future in relation to it. Therefore, that Brahman is omniscient. According to the Vedanta, then Brahman is omniscient not because it can exercise the power of knowing everything other than itself, but because it is the all and it is the very essence of consciousness. It is not the ordinary consciousness opposed to unconsciousness. It is Atman himself who manifests himself as this pair of opposites in empirical life, in whose inherent light all pairs of opposites live, thrive and have their being. It is only relatively to these two that Brahman is spoken of as being omniscient, empirically speaking. From the absolute or transcendental view, however, Atman as pure consciousness is the all. This is the 23rd chapter. Next, 24th one. Omnipotence of Brahman. Now, omniscience we have seen, omnipotence of Brahman. I think let us see in the next session this one. Hare Ram. Sadguru Charanarpitamastu. Om Tat Sat. Brahmarpanamastu. Sarve Janas Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokas Samastas Sukhino Bhavantu.